Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another FIFA 22 video where today I'm going to be sharing with you my 4-3-3-5 custom tactics. Now this was one of my favorite formations last year in FIFA. I liked playing with the false 9. Obviously for me as a big Liverpool fan, it's quite similar to how Liverpool play, obviously normally with Firmino kind of as a bit of a false 9. He's not really a traditional number 9. So this is a formation that I was really high on last year. I really like this formation. The tricky thing with these 4-3-3 formations has always been the big problem. How do you get the wingers involved? And today we're going to be doing our best to get these wingers involved. And the instructions and tactics we've set up mainly to try and get those guys involved. And we are playing with the false 9 as a false 9. So first up, I want to start with the tactics. Now, Donnarumma in goal obviously is going to be on comes for crosses and sweeper keeper. I think that's pretty much the standard stuff for every formation and every goalkeeper regardless. Now, the fullbacks. Now, I've decided to go with Hakimi and Robertson on stay back while attacking. Now, I personally am playing with the 5-2-1-2 at the moment, and I'm loving having my fullbacks bombing up and down, especially Hakimi up that right-hand side. Very, very fun, very, very attacking. But I find that in fullback formations, especially if you're going to maybe be taking this into a competitive game, whether that be FUT Champions, whether that be division rivals, I find that fullback formations, especially against people that have lots of pace, and especially if people have got Mbappe's and Neymar's, which at the moment maybe isn't quite rare, but I think in the upcoming weeks it's going to become quite a big thing. I think a lot of people are going to have those players, and having your fullbacks on stay back while attacking, I think is going to be really important. I don't think you're going to be able to have them going back. Going forwards, because I just think it's going to leave too much space, especially as the caliber of attackers does get better as the game goes on. So we're going to be having them on stay back while attacking, which isn't my favorite, but I think it's going to give us more solidarity in midfield. In terms of the CDM, I'm going to be going for Marquinhos in that CDM spot. Of course, pretty much the standard stuff with cut passing lanes, stay back while attacking, and cover center. I have experimented with man mark in the last weekend league with one of my DMs in a different formation. I didn't really notice much difference. I think because of the way that the players are a lot more intelligent this year, especially the attacking players, that I didn't really find man mark. It didn't really seem to kind of do anything. He never really seemed to be... not just Marquinhos, but anybody that's on man mark didn't really seem to make any difference. So cut passing lanes, I think, is always going to be the way to go at the moment. Unless it gets patched going forwards, I don't think playing with man mark is going to be the best idea in those positions. In terms of the midfielders, we've got Pogba and Makelele. I actually packed Makelele this morning out of an untradeable 50k pack, which is absolutely mad. So he's going to make a really good midfielder. Not necessarily a great box-to-box midfielder, which is kind of what these guys need to be. So if you're looking for two players to put in these positions, you do want two midfielders that are going to be a bit more attacking. So like, for example, a Pogba, a Fernandes, a De Bruyne, a Goretzka, those type of players in that midfield, because they are going to be getting forwards and they are going to be getting into goal scoring opportunities and chance creation opportunities. So we have left them on balanced for attack and balanced on the crossing runs. I didn't want to have them get into the box because I don't want to have too many players getting into the box, because it's then going to be easy counters. You're going to have nobody to kind of stop the counters. And I also didn't want to put them on, for example, get forwards, because I think that's, again, going to leave your midfield way too open, especially with the way we have the tactics set up. So pretty much just balance for the two midfielders is the way we're going to run. In terms of Vardy up top, we're going to have him on stay central, but we're going to have him on false 9. Now, Vardy is not the ideal player to play. I think generally you do want somebody who can play the false 9. In this position, you don't necessarily need someone who's got super high pace, but you want someone who's definitely got good shooting and good passing. And ideally, if you can, you want them to maybe have high dribbling as well. So someone like a Firmino could be perfect in this position. Someone like Karim Benzema's Player of the Month card would be very good. Someone who can actually play like a false 9. There's no point having an Mbappe, for example, here and playing him as a false 9, because they do drop in. And generally, this centre forward actually doesn't score the majority of your goals. It actually is generally the midfielders that I've found when using this formation that do get most of your scoring opportunities, not necessarily centre forward. So your centre forward really wants to have good passing and good dribbling is mainly what you want to be. So Vardy's not necessarily the best player to have in this position. So obviously a better player will perform better than my Vardy did. But stay central, false 9 for the false 9. And then Aubameyang and Bernardo Silva on the wings. Again, not necessarily the ideal players to be using, especially Bernardo Silva. It doesn't really have pace. You know, if you're going to be playing with wingers, you do really need some pace. Even though these guys kind of, because of the way we've got our tactics set up, these guys kind of play almost like old school inside forwards in a way, because we are going to play with this formation quite narrow to get these guys involved. But we're going to have them on cut inside, get into the box and getting behind. So obviously the getting behind is for quicker players. Get into the box, we obviously want them to be in goal scoring positions, and obviously the cut inside to make those runs on the inside. Now the downside obviously with cut inside, normally you like to pair cut inside with the fullbacks being on balance and overlap, because then you're going to have one guy going on the inside. Let's say Bernardo Silva's on the ball, he can go on the inside, Hakimi can go on the outside. You have 2-on-1 situation. But because we're not going to be doing that with this formation, you are going to be relying a little bit more on your individual skill, because you're not going to have that extra body going forward. So it may be, because you don't have those guys going forward, be a little bit more difficult to score goals. But the idea is that the midfielders do a lot of your donkey work and a lot of your goal scoring. So moving on into the tactics, it is very, very basic with the way we've got it set up. It's not anything too complicated. It's not anything that's too difficult to use, but it is designed pretty much entirely to get those wingers involved and to be quite narrow. So the typical stuff when it comes to defensive style width and depth, you know, balance on the defensive style, 50 on the defensive width. I've never really found any situation where changing this defensive width has been successful. I generally just leave it on 50 for all formations, and it seems to be kind of very, very successful. I don't see much of a need to really ever change this. In terms of the depth, this is something that's just more dependent on how you feel, how comfortable you feel at defending. If you feel very, very comfortable in your defending abilities, obviously the higher you can go, the better, because the more you'll be able to sort of press your opponent and just get into better opportunities. Obviously, if you're someone who's not so confident, you have to go a little bit further back, give yourself a little bit more time to read attacks and whatnot. But then it becomes a little bit harder to attack. So I play on around about 60 at the moment. Just something that you kind of need, especially when you come up against people that have got a lot of pace in their teams. In terms of build-up play, we're obviously going to be playing on balance. I didn't want to go for slow build-up. I wanted to go for something a little bit faster in this formation. Obviously, with wing formations, it's kind of a little bit more about sort of pace and just playing quickly. But I didn't want to go too crazy on fast build-up, because I think that's just going to open up this formation. It's not the most compact and solid formation, so I didn't want to open things up too much. So I decided to just go for balance on the build-up play, and that seemed very, very effective. It seemed to work very well with the way that I played in this formation. Maybe something I have to check out in Foot Champs this weekend. In terms of chance creation, we went on direct passing. Now, again, this is kind of a standard and a staple for a lot of our formation videos. But I just find that it's the one that seems to work. I don't really find too many situations where the other formation, the other options are very, very effective. You know, I've tried it on forward runs. Again, I don't think it worked for this formation. I think forward runs is a little bit too offensive and leaves you a little bit too open. Possession can work, but it doesn't really work in a 4-3-3. 4-3-3 is kind of more about pace and counter-attacking and being on the front foot. So direct passing is the way to go. It can open up that midfield a little bit, which is why we've left the midfielders Pogba and Makalele on balance, because they are going to be doing a lot of running forwards anyway. And then in terms of the offensive width, this is kind of the one that's really the most important, I guess. Now, the narrower you go, the more you'll get your wide players involved. So it's how narrow do you feel like you want to go. Obviously, the more narrow you make your formation, the easier you'll make it for your opponent to play out on the wing. So anyone who you're playing against that has wingers is going to have plenty of space, because your team is quite narrow. So decided to go for around about 45. It does get those wingers a little bit narrower with their starting positions, and with the cut inside tactic, you know, it works very, very well. You don't want to go too narrow, because then you're going to have players sort of stepping on each other's toes. You're not going to have any out balls. You're going to be passing inside all the time, and you don't want to become predictable. If all your players are on the inside, it becomes really easy for your opponent to defend. He just knows that he has to defend the inside passing lane, and he's going to intercept a lot of balls, because especially if you're someone like me and using Bernardo Silva as that winger, you know, you're not going to have the pace to go on the outside. You have to go inside. So you don't want to go too narrow on that offensive width. You want to make sure that you've still got some opportunities to go on the wing. And then players in the box, corners and free kicks is all the standard stuff that we use for our formation. So I was a big fan of this 4-3-3-5. I think it worked very, very well for me. Seemed to suit my play style quite well. I really did enjoy the false nine. Actually, the best player in this formation was Pogba, with making a lot of good runs beyond Vardy and scoring actually the majority of my goals. I think Aubameyang was the top scorer in the end, but Pogba, those two midfielders are very, very important. You do need midfielders that can shoot and score. Don't necessarily have to be the fastest, but they need to have good goal scoring abilities, because they get a lot of your chances. But that is it for the 4-3-3-5. I really was a big fan of this formation, so make sure you check it out, and make sure you let me know in the comment section how it worked for you. Do drop a thumbs up if you enjoy the content, subscribe as well if you are new to the channel. But that is all for today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.